Hello, everyone. On today's podcast episode, I'm going to talk about what I talked about in the past, about secrets and about God's secrets. In the past, I said, God has a lot of secrets, and, after so many episodes, you may think that I've talked about God's secret, on the podcast, or whether I know God's secret or not. The truth is, I may know some secrets, or I may not. You know, there's secrets about, there's secrets that I don't know about. For example, what happened before the world was created? What existed before the world was created? I don't know. I mean, like, what truly existed? What type of world was there before this world, the world we live in, was created? That secret, I don't know. It could be hidden in the Bible, but, it's a secret to me, As for other things, no, even if I wanted to, you know, there are things I can't say and things I can't say. The things I've said on this podcast aren't secrets. They are hidden, yes. But just like, gravity was hidden until it was discovered, just like the concept of time was hidden until it was discovered. It's hidden in the Bible, but it's not a secret. You understand? Many things are hidden in the Bible, but they're not secrets. The Bible is it's a simplified version of something very complex. The world around us is very, very complex. And the Bible was created, in a way to simplify it so that everybody can understand it. But within that simplicity, there's also complexity. Within the simplified Bible, God has put within that Bible, countless hidden truths. It's like almost infinite. You can find so many things about life within the Bible. The things you understand, and the things you don't understand. The things you can see just from in the Bible, and then the hidden things within the Bible that you can't see. Because the Bible was never created for everyone, was never created as a science book. It was created for as a book of God. And in this world, there are people who are smart and people who aren't smart. There are people who go to school and people who don't go to school. There are people who has, a great understanding of words and language. And there are people who only have a basic understanding or no understanding at all. And the Bible was created for everyone, meaning the Bible has to be, simple for everyone to understand. And then for those who have a greater understanding of the world, the hidden truths are there for them, to explore. If you want, if you have a greater understanding or a greater intelligence, so those who are smarter can figure more things out in the Bible than those who aren't. Yet both sides, both people, both groups of people, smart and dumb, can still understand the Bible in its base form. The vast majority of people can understand the Bible in its base form, and that's all you need. The simplified version of the Bible is the best version because it's easy for everyone to understand. And that's how the Bible is written, in a way that, it satisfies the curiosity of those who aren't that intelligent, and also the curiosity of those who are extremely intelligent. People who are extremely intelligent can figure out things that most people can't. And the Bible is written, in that way, with hidden patterns and hidden codes for those people to figure out, for those people to discover. And yes, there are secrets, in this world, God's secrets in this world that most people would never ever discover. There are things in this world you never discover because, the world is infinite and we are finite. Science can only simulate a finite version of the world. We can only discover a finite, version of the world. We can only simulate a finite version of the infinite world. In order to simulate an infinite world, requires an infinite computer. A computer with infinite energy, right? The only thing that has infinite energy in this world is God itself. So the only thing that can simulate the world is God himself. So the only thing science can do what? Is search and search and search, but never ever get to the end, because the world is infinite. Since the world is infinite, scientists can only simulate a finite version of the infinite world. And no matter how much we look, no matter how much we discern, no matter how much we research, we will never get to the end of the world, because the world is infinite. Since we'll never get to the end of the world, the best thing we can do, all our calculations will always be finite. At the end of the day, it'll always be finite. The only person that can understand all the secrets of the world is God himself. The only person that can understand everything there is to know about the world is God himself, because the world is infinite. So the only thing we can understand as humans, as finite humans, with finite level of intelligence, is the finite world around us, is a finite version of the world around us. So, yes, there are secrets, and no, I won't tell anyone any secrets. The only thing I can tell you are the things that are already there in the Bible. The truths that are already there in the world is the only thing I can say on this podcast. And no, life, you have to be smart. There are things you should tell people and things you shouldn't tell people. Do not play the fool who tells everybody all your secrets. It's not beneficial. There are things people should know and things people should know about you. Giving everybody all your secrets is detrimental. Telling everybody everything about you is detrimental to you. In the Bible it states that even God himself, in order to see God, you have to be dead. In order to see God, you'll be dead. Or you have to die to see the true image of God. Because God is infinite. While alive, we are finite beings. We're incapable of seeing the true image of God, because God is everywhere. In order to see all of God, you have to be infinite. You're not infinite. So you can never truly see all of God. So God will always have secrets. There'll always be parts you will be incapable of seeing. And that you should also, follow that line. There should be parts of you, you share to the world, and parts of you that you keep secret. I'm not telling you to lie. I'm just telling you to just keep, there are things you shouldn't tell anyone. If someone asks you a question about yourself and you don't feel like telling them, just tell them you don't feel like telling them. Or you can always just remain silent. You always have the right to remain silent. You always have the right to remain silent. You don't have to tell the truth, but you also shouldn't lie. There's an in-between point between not telling the truth and not lying. Silence. You can always be silent. You can always just tell them, change questions. I don't want to answer it, or I don't feel like answering you. There are many ways to deny someone, and you don't have to lie. You shouldn't lie. So the reason why, and the things that I know is the reason why it's impossible for me to believe that God doesn't exist. Why? Because I know that God exists, 100%. And because I know that God exists, it's easier from this vantage point to prove that God exists. It's easier on my end to prove that God exists, because I already know that he exists. And here's a simple proof, This proof is just logical, right? because we're logical beings and we live in a logical world. We can only understand things logically, right? Because logic and intelligence are synonymous. So here's proof that God exists. In the Bible, it states that God is omnipresent, right? And God is intelligent. God is intelligent and God is omnipresent. And God created the world. That means that the world exists within the body of God, right? The world exists within the body of God because God is omnipresent. Because God is omnipresent, that indicates that the world exists within the body of God. And since God is intelligent, it means the world is intelligent, right? So the properties of God is of the world from a theologist's point of view is that God is intelligent, God is the world, therefore the world is intelligent. And the rules of the world has to be intelligent, right? Then let me give you an example of let me give you the proof right here. We humans are intelligent beings, right? Intelligence and logic are synonymous. You can't be a logical person without being an intelligent person. You can't be considered intelligent without being logical. So logic and intelligence are what? One. So logic and intelligence are synonymous, right? Guess what? Logical people, intelligence, cannot decipher something that is not intelligent. Something that was created illogically cannot be what? Understood using logic. Something that was made illogically or something that exists illogically cannot be understood using logic. Something that exists unintelligently cannot be understood using intelligence. Therefore, in order to understand something, the thing has to be what? Created intelligently, right? Or the very thing itself has to be intelligent. For us to understand the world has to be intelligent. For us humans to understand the world around us, the world has to be intelligent. Do we humans understand the world around us? That's a yes. Does the rules of this world make logical sense to humans? That's a yes. If the rules that govern the world, the scientific rules that govern the world makes logical sense to us, it means the rules are intelligent. If the rules are intelligent, that means what? The rules and God are synonymous. It means the world is intelligent. If the rules that govern the world are intelligent, it means the world is intelligent. If the rules that govern the world are logical, it means we live in a logical world. And logic and intelligence are synonymous. If the rules that govern the world are logical, science has proven that the rules that govern this world are logical. If the rules that govern this world aren't logical, we won't be able to understand it. Just a fact. Logical beings cannot understand something that's illogical. Something that's illogical does not make logical sense. Right? Since the world makes logical sense and can be deciphered logically, it automatically means that the world is a logical world or an intelligent world. Since the world is intelligent and the world is omnipresent, the world and God are synonymous because God is intelligent and God is omnipresent. The world is intelligent, the world is omnipresent. We won't be able to understand the world if the world is illogical. If the world didn't make logical sense, we wouldn't be able to understand the world. Therefore, the world is a logical world. The world is an intelligent world. The very rules of this world indicates intelligence. The rules that govern the world you live in indicates intelligence. Science itself, the very purpose of science is deciphering the intelligence that's already there in the world. It's trying to make sense of the logical world. It's trying to see the logic in the world around us. If the world didn't make logical sense, you won't be able to find logic within the world. The fact that science can understand the logic of the world means what? Implies that the world is logical. If the world is logical, by default, the very world around us is intelligent, because logic and intelligence are synonymous. Logic and intelligence are one. There's no difference between the two. Since this world makes logical sense, this world by default is intelligent. We're living in an intelligent world. That's the only reason why our intelligence can understand it. Intelligence is only capable of understanding something that's intelligent. We're incapable of understanding something that's illogical. And since we're capable of understanding this world, it automatically means that this world is logical. This world is intelligent, right? Since this world is intelligent, that's the proof of an intelligent creator. The world itself is intelligent. Since the world itself is intelligent, the world itself is God. That's the intelligent creator you're looking for. The world itself is the intelligent creator you're looking for. Because God itself is omnipresent, meaning God is the world around us. And God is intelligent. It means that the world itself is intelligent. The Bible states that the world is intelligent because God is intelligent. And basic logic also proves that what? The world around us is intelligent. Just like the Bible says. The world is intelligent because God is intelligent. God is intelligent because the world is intelligent. We can understand the world because the world is intelligent. We can understand the world because the world is logical. We logical beings can only understand something that makes logical sense. The world makes logical sense. The world makes intelligent sense because the world is intelligent. This is also an extra proof. There are many other ways to prove that the world around you is intelligent, but this is just, another an extra proof to you that you're living in an intelligent world. You're living in an intelligent world. Nothing in this world is unintelligent. There's a logical reason why everything in this world exists. And since since science can simulate the world using intelligence, using computers, it means this world is intelligent. There are logical rules, there are mathematical rules, logical mathematical rules that govern this world. And logic and intelligence are synonymous. There's no difference between the two. You live in an intelligent world. You live in a world governed by intelligence. You live in a world governed by God. It's very easy to prove that God exists because God exists. When something exists, it is possible to prove its existence. When something that doesn't, when something doesn't exist, it is impossible to prove its non-existence, or it's impossible to prove its existence. I'm getting confused. Sorry about that. I just got a message. I'm half reading it, half talking. Let me remove it. So let me rephrase that. When something exists, it is possible to prove that it exists and impossible to prove that it doesn't exist, right? It is possible to prove that the God of the Bible exists. Yet, guess what? It is impossible to prove that the God of the Bible doesn't exist. Doesn't that mean something to you? It is virtually impossible to prove that the God of the Bible doesn't exist. Yet, I can easily prove that the God of the Bible exists in multiple ways. Multiple ways. And I've done it on this podcast in many different episodes using different ways. So if you still don't believe that God doesn't exist, the problem isn't that there isn't proof, is that you don't want to accept the truth. You're too illogical to understand what logic means. Illogical people are incapable of understanding logic. Logical people are incapable of understanding something that's illogical. That's the duality of life. When you're an illogical person, basic logic doesn't work for you. When you're a logical person, illogical things do not make sense. When something is illogical, your mind is incapable of understanding it. When you're an illogical person, when something is logical, your mind is incapable of understanding it. Because your mind does not work properly. When your mind does not work properly, basic logic does not work on you. Basic logic would not make any logical sense to you. That's why you're illogical. You're illogical because logic doesn't work on you. That's the very definition of illogical. And when you're a logical person, something that was created illogically will not make any logical sense to you. And since the world makes logical sense to us, the world was created intelligently. The world was created logically. The world exists logically. The world exists intelligently. The world is governed by intelligence, or otherwise it would not make any intelligent sense, any logical sense to us. That's how life works. Most people are expecting, most atheists or people who don't believe in God, who doubt the existence of God, they're waiting for God, the God of the Bible to come to their doorstep. Otherwise, they will not believe that God exists. Even with all the evidence that proves that God exists, all the logical proofs that God exists, they will not believe that God exists, not because God doesn't exist, because they're too demented. They're too self-centered. They believe that they're so important in this world that God must come down, from wherever it is to their doorstep to tell them that, yes, I am here, before they believe in the existence of God. Guess what? God doesn't care about fame. God doesn't care about fortune. God doesn't care about power. Because God is the only thing that exists. God doesn't care about fame. Because everything in this world is God. What fame does God need? Who is God trying to, what point is God trying to prove by coming to your doorstep and tell you that I exist? God will exist whether you believe God exists or not. It doesn't matter to God. It does not matter. When you're the only thing that exists, fame means nothing. Who do you want fame from? Yourself? It makes no logical sense to seek fame from yourself. God does not need you to know that He exists. God will exist whether you want God to exist or not. His existence is not based on whether you know he exists or not. God will not come down to your doorstep to tell you that, hey, I exist. So if you're waiting for God to come down to your doorstep, you're trying to tell God what to do, that God must come down to your doorstep, stand right in front of you and tell you, hey, I exist, then you're looking at the wrong God. The God of the Bible does not care about fame. He's not an attention seeker. God does not care about attention. He doesn't care about being famous. God does not care about being famous. Because everything in this world is God. You see things from God's point of view, you realize fame, power, and fortune are meaningless. Because everything in God is God. Since everything is God, it doesn't matter whether you believe he exists or not. Life will still go on. At most, you only live 60 years. Sometimes, if you get lucky, you live 110 or 120 years old. God is infinite. Your life is only 100 years. It's very short. If you don't turn back now, it's not, God won't miss out too much, but you'll miss out on God. You're the one that's missing out. God isn't missing out on much because God is infinite, but you're missing out on infinity. You are missing out on God himself. God isn't missing out on you because God is you. God experiences everything you experience, but you'll never experience what God has to offer for you. You'll never experience what God has for you if you keep believing that God doesn't exist. And God has a lot for you. God has a lot for you. But if you keep denying God, not because he doesn't exist, but because you want him to, be a personal pet that'll come down to your doorstep and tell you what, that he exists or not. Your personal, puppet. You command him and he'll come down to your doorstep and tell you what, and tell you that he exists. That's not the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible doesn't follow, orders. You can't tell the God of the Bible what to do. You just can't. So if you have that mindset that I won't believe in God until God comes down to my doorstep, if that's your mindset of trying to tell God what to do, God won't listen to you. You can't tell God what to do. That's your own personal problem, not the problem of God. That's your own personal problem. You're the one missing out on God's grace. God is not missing out on you because God is you. God sees things from your point of view as well. God knows everything you experience, but you never experience the great wonders of God if you close your mind to God. You're the one that's missing out, not God. You are the one that's missing out on the power that you would have. The powers that you would have if you believe in God are far more than the power that you have right now. The might that you have, the moment you start believing in God, the moment you start following God's footsteps, you tap into the infinite power that God has. God will not be working for you. All that infinite power that God has will not be working for you, will not be helping you every step of your life, every step of the way from now on. But if you keep denying God, if you keep denying the very basic truth that God exists, just because you don't want God, you want God to come down to your doorstep first, guess what? God doesn't care. You're the one that's missing out, not God. You are. You're the one that's missing out on life. If you ignore, life itself, by ignoring God, you're ignoring life. How can you not be depressed when you ignore the very basic truths of life? That God exists. This is a basic fact of life. A basic 100% fact of life. God exists because the world exists. The world exists because God exists. That's the basic facts of life. If you ignore life itself, you will never live a good life. If you ignore the truths of life, you will never live a good life. And that's just how life works, you know. So don't expect God to come down to your doorstep to prove that He exists. It's not going to happen. The God of the Bible isn't that type of God. Read your Bible. The God of the Bible is not that type of God. Never has and never will be. Doesn't crave attention that much. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.